I'm Georgia Stull, and I am joined by my colleagues, Paige Johnson, Deanne Perigo, and Christine Perigo. Today's topic is what I wish I knew when I began. And we have quite a few years represented just in this little group of four. And I'll start out by saying one of the things I wish I knew when I started, honestly, was to understand you're going to be on your feet a lot, you're going to be bent over things a lot, you're going to be, and that is to learn how to take care of your body. I would have bought my mat. I bought a really good quality mat that is resistant to static, so I don't have to deal with that. And if I went through plantar fasciitis, all kinds of stuff. I wish I would have bought a mat sooner. I wish I would have learned to relax more with my hands on the handlebar, keep those shoulders down, that neck up, and I would have been a lot better off. And it made a difference once I started paying attention to that. How about you, Deanne? What's one thing you wish you knew when you started?
Where to find training. That was a big one for me. Because I started out working for someone else before getting my own machine and working from home and figuring out, besides YouTube, where do I find classes? And at least now we have the Gamma website that has all sorts of classes on it, and we didn't have that. I did find both you, Georgia, and Paige eventually, and found some classes from you when MQX and MQS came through town. But man, that was a difficult thing for me. And there is so much education that we have right now.
Oh, yes.
You know,
when I started, there wasn't.
Yeah.
And I think Paige was probably the pioneer of getting out there for classes for computerized quilters, weren't you?
I did travel around, and there really wasn't. I know Al Hutchins was around and did a little bit, and Kim Diamond did a little bit, but they just did a little bit.
Right.
And so education was a big deal. And a lot of it I learned by trial and error. Someone says to you, I did this and this is what happened, and now I do this. And I have been quilting professionally for 21 years, so I do have quite a bit of time involved. And when you started talking about this, I thought, oh, I got to think back to how I started. And I started freehanding. I freehanded for 6 years before I added the computer. And I will go back to Georgia, what you said about your body. I had to learn to relax. And when I was moving with freehand, I would exhale on the movement. It was kind of like yoga. And the mat, that is huge. I did the mats because my kids had them. I started in my basement, and going to a professional high grade mat, it's worth the money.
Oh, every penny, every penny.
And I also learned to sit down. So I have a drafting chair.
Yep.
And that has helped me. Hydraulics. I can change the height of my machine by even an inch, changes your posture.
Do you know how I do hydraulics? I don't have that, but I learned, this is crazy, but if I just spread my feet further and less, back and forth, guess what it does? It changes. It's the same sort of thing. It's not as wonderful as hydraulics.
Well, now I don't have a picture of Georgia like a giraffe. You know how the giraffe spreads go take a drink? That's Georgia now.
Yeah, that's right. You spread your legs. It helps. It really does help. It makes a difference. So, but I would, again, in the beginning, I wish I would have just gotten hydraulics.
Yeah, the hydraulics were very important, and lighting. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that was my next thing. Lighting. I remember going to a studio tour, sort of, and Ivan went with me. And the first thing he said when we left was, "You need more lighting." It's like, yes, I because I was in a basement, like many quilters are. I was in a basement and lighting was an issue. Not after that. Ivan took good care of me. I had like daylight
Well,
downstairs.
taking care of your body, I think, is a huge piece of this, that it is more physical than we realize.
Mhm.
And holding the machine and trying to avoid the carpal tunnel thing.
Yeah. The repetition of button pushing and things like that.
Mhm.
I even put monitors.
Yes, not that. This.
I put a monitor straight ahead of me
Mhm.
because I found that I was having neck problems, always turning my head the same direction.
Right. As well as computer glasses, because I wear bifocals, and guess what you do? You do this all the time. And until you realize it, you're like, oh man, why is my back, my neck always hurting? And then computer glasses, it was like, what a miracle. And so it is just a matter of trying to, not have those problems and doing the things necessary to take care of yourself. Christine's younger than all the rest of us, so she probably doesn't have these problems that we do.
She doesn't have glasses anyhow.
No, I don't have a lot of those issues. But I think that the biggest thing for me is really understanding that because we have a computerized system, the digital representation is always going to look perfect on the screen.
Uh-huh.
But the quilt is a real world analog object, and we're having to do that digital to analog conversion. And I think that was the biggest thing, is kind of letting go of what's absolutely perfect, as long as what I'm working on right there in that single boundary on that quilt looks great on the quilt, to let go of what it looks like on the screen.
I really agree. And that was a really hard lesson for me. I tend to have perfectionist tendencies, and it really was tough. And one stitch would go off of a line and I would take it out. And I finally realized, you know what did it for me is going to quilt shows, really big quilt shows, and looking at quilts that won great prizes, and they had stitches that weren't in the right, like you could tell. So I realized that it's just human, and it brings a quality to the quilt that I think I actually prefer, rather than absolute perfection. Does that sound crazy?
You have to have your own level of acceptance.
Yeah. And also, well, those of us who've been doing it 15 years or more, the attitude of other people that it must be perfect because it is computerized. And oh my goodness, if they only knew how hard we have to work, to bring that level, even if it is perfect on the screen. There's so many factors.
Well, that and people think we just push a button and it's perfect. And it's it's not. In order for it to get that way and look that great on the quilt, it's more than pushing just about one single button.
Yeah, there used to be a major quilt show that called Computerized Quilting, the hands-free category. And I used to say, yep, I just throw that quilt down in the basement and go pick it up the next day. It's not that simple. And I do think, it is a challenge to learn how to make it easier. But it's definitely not hands-free. It is, I believe computerization is a tool, just like a ruler, like anything else. And it's only as good as you learn how to use the tool that you have.
Well, I came from the freehand. I had a freehand machine for 6 years. So making the jump, and all I did was custom. I didn't start doing overall designs to make money until after I had my second machine. But the big thing for me was shrinkage is real. And your boundary is your reality. And so once the quilt shrinks because you stitched it, you need a new reality.
Right. Exactly.
And that's a big difference from being a freehander. You are compensating for that shrinkage as you go.
As you move.
You see where the line moved. You don't know it moved. You can't noticeably see that it moved, but because of shrinkage, it did.
Right.
So that's a big tip for people. And I wish I would have had a better understanding of it.
Oh, me too. Well, and when we started, didn't we have basically 4-point boundaries? You know, like, think about it. We had a block, you know, boing, 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 boing. And then you had to deal with the quilt top and with what we called surfing to make it. Now we're blessed to have these amazing ability to do, you know, significant boundaries.
Now the program has advanced.
Oh, yeah. And I remember when they said, what do you wish it could do? And you're thinking, oh, I can't even imagine. Oh, we can imagine now, that's for sure. Now we come up with all kinds of things we want it to do.
Well, and I remember the first time I ever used wool batting, and they tried to get, you know, a fill to fit perfect, and no.
All that fluff. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the shrinkage is affected by a lot of different contributing factors, and you just have to kind of realize what they are.
Yeah. Well, whether we like it or not, experience does take time, and it is important. And an individual can take all the classes they want, but until they put their hands on that machine and load a quilt and go for it, it's just, experience is important. And everything from how tight your quilt sandwich is, how tight you keep your tension, what kind of batting, what kind of fabrics. And, you know, haven't you ever had some kind of weird fabric that, honest to goodness, you couldn't get good tension? And even worse, like a quilt top. I had a quilt top one time that had so many different fabrics, and the tension would change as it went from one fabric to another fabric. And there's not really anything much you can do about that. It is what it is.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what about, we do learn that. Putting your seams parallel to the bars was something I wish I knew. What about thread?
Well, I made a decision early on to only buy quality thread, that's for sure. And don't accept some customer who says, oh, can you use this thread I found in the bottom of it? No, it's not that. I think that part comes down to learning when it's okay to say no. Like, there's certain brands of batting I won't use. And I have the guts to just say no. But I don't say no, I don't want to use it. I say, I want you to have the best possible quilt. And that means that this is not going to be the product that you're going to want to use. So, and it's true.
Well, I know that all of you started out with hand guiding, right? Even you, Christine?
Not on a long arm. But
I never did.
I think I'm the only one.
One of the things I've learned was that having the skills to do both is so beneficial. Not to lock yourself into just computerize, but learn how to hand guide, to do some of those fills, create something a little bit unique. It's not only is it fun, but I think that sometimes it can make things go faster.
Oh, freehand is faster. I will.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's another thing, is realizing that computerized does take, you know, especially custom, it takes 2 times longer, 3 times longer than freehand. And
it does.
Yeah, coming to that realization was hard because I want to be able to do whatever I want to do, but in order to get that result, it takes longer, right?
Well, I think of it as the precision I can get with the computer and the freehand. And at this point, the only thing I freehand is background fills. So I have a few that are my standard, and I do them fairly small, and they're in small areas. Otherwise, I would do a fill with the computer. But I don't use my freehanding as a something that is the majority of the quilt.
Right.
I just save it for the smaller pieces.
I love the computerized quilting, and I think there are a lot of people who come to us because of, as computerized quilters, because of the kinds of patterns that we can bring to a quilt that are less likely to happen from hand guiders. And which, you know, there's a place for all of us. I have a deep respect for people who hand quilt, who hand guide, who can, you know, and I think we just have to celebrate what each one of us can bring to the table. And,
Yeah.
I think I wish you know, I felt like I had to be so defensive when I first got my machine. Like the minute you said you had a computerized machine, oh, that's not real quilting. And now I just like, if that's your attitude, that's your attitude. I can't fix it, but you know, I don't have to defend it either.
It took me a long time to accept and publicize that, hey, I use a computerized machine.
Right.
And it's okay. And I actually do great work with it. You know, I do innovative artistic things, and yes, it's computerized, and that's okay.
Right. You're just using a tool. And
Exactly.
I don't look down on hand guiders that use rulers. You know, it's a tool, and God bless those who have learned how to hone that, you know, and really do beautiful work with it. So I just appreciate the art that everybody brings to the table. I love the differences that you get, actually.
There has been a change, and of course I go back a little further than some of you, but I know when I first started, I had a stitch regulator on my machine.
Yeah.
That was kind of cheating.
Right.
And I was told, oh, in 6 months you won't need it. And I thought, well, what? I like it. But I think the prejudices against the computerization has changed over the years.
Yeah.
So new people coming in probably aren't seeing that, some of the things that we got.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we had to search for education. They don't anymore. And so I think people that are getting into this now are going to advance at a greater rate than we did.
Yeah.
I thought after 5 years, I couldn't believe how much my skills had improved. I thought, oh my goodness. And I still think every year I'm improving, I'm getting better. And that's one of the things when you're first starting, if you have that drive to improve your skills, some people get to a point and they're happy with it.
Right.
But
and that's okay.
Oh, it's totally okay. It's
Yeah.
I'm going to be the one that's always going to push.
Yeah. Well, I'm always, like wonder what would happen if. So, and I like variety. I don't like the same old every day. I like variety.
Well, and I think as long as you think of it as just a tool, then it doesn't control you, you control it. You know, it's just another tool that you can pull, it's in your pocket. And, you know, don't be afraid of the computer. A lot of people that are coming
Right.
in now are, you know, computers are their daily lives. And
Right.
so they're not afraid. And they
And
use other, you know, software
that's a big
packages.
difference I see, because obviously I've been like Paige teaching a long time, and some of the hardest people to teach are the people who are terrified of the computer or afraid they'll break it more than anything. And you don't see that as much because computers are much more of a person's daily life. And
Undo always works. As long as you don't have to pick a stitch, you're fine.
Yeah, well, it happens. And, you know, our software has changed so much that I always say, as long as you don't put a stitch in the wrong place or have bad stitch quality, then you usually don't have to pick anything out, because we can recover from any little bobble just about, as long as no two things that didn't, or wrong color thread. Well, there's that.
I
have
2
done
days
that.
picking out something that I didn't like the color of the thread.
Yeah, well, that's more of a personal choice. Like, oh, I don't like that. I've done that. I put designs in and just cut your losses. This isn't working. Take it out. It really, I am that way.
That's a big thing. That are you willing to accept this? move on, do it different on the next quilt. Or if you're not willing, do the work to change it, which is
Right.
what's going on behind me right now.
Well,
One of the other things is if I make 3 mistakes in a day, I stop and I walk away.
good point. Right. I do believe that there comes a point when, like, I'm done. I'm
Yep.
just done. And that takes me back to home ec. I can remember trying to put my first zipper in, you know, and you take it out and put it right back in wrong again. And it's like, okay, I just have to walk away because you'll just keep doing the same thing. But along that line, that makes me think of one thing I wish I'd known when I very first started. And that is, it's okay to try anything, and it's okay to decide this works for you, even if it doesn't work for anybody else. It doesn't, you know, and that's why I tell people take classes from lots of different people, because we all bring something different to the table. And I don't need to defend this is how I do it, but I don't mind saying this is how I do it. If it works for you, awesome. And if it doesn't, you know, I tried certain things for a long time and went, not really for me. You know me, I staple my quilts, and some people think that's the most horrible thing, and that's okay. I don't care. It works for me.
Perfect.
That's all that matters.
Well, you were talking about the mistakes thing, and that brought up something more for me. Sometimes you're going to make that one stitch out of order, going to make it look a lot worse by taking it out and trying to redo it. How did your zipper look after you tried to put it in 3 times?
Yeah,
Sometimes
exactly.
you live with what's there.
And also remembering that when you're quilting, you're in a space, especially custom, like this much space.
The bubble.
Right. And we are looking at it so close that you do see that little stitch that goes off. But then what brings that reality to light is the customer comes, you get the quilt out and you go, now there's this one little place and you can't find it for anything. And that's what taught me, hey, you can't sweat every teeny tiny little stitch. And what is it they say, if you can't see it riding by on a galloping horse? Well, if you can't see it just standing in front of you, you know, then it's okay. And so learning, like you said, to let go of what you need to, and there are some things that, yep, it has to come out and be fixed for whatever reason. But you're right, 3 or 4 times is not a good plan.
No, because it's going to show. And the other thing, I do use zippers on my machines. And if we have a custom quilt, we do not take the zipper off and we hang it up. And everybody has to go and look at it. One of the things I learned early on is your quilt can go back on the machine.
Yep.
I've had quilts go to shows and come back
Right
on the machine, binding and everything, to make some changes.
Right. You get that feedback that says you need this or that. And
it's generally more quilting, more as well.
Yeah. Well,
but taking pictures before and doing some mock-ups on my laptop, that really helps me, because if I take a picture of a block and then I take a picture of the whole quilt, I can see where secondary patterns can fit in, and I can try different patterns to create all different looks on it. And that has saved me a lot of time, because if I put it on the machine and I look at it, it may take me days to figure out what I want to do. Whereas I have those days if something else is running and I have a laptop with Sam on it.
You are absolutely right. And that is one of the things that I developed over time, is doing the mock-ups. Because you see how the designs interact with one another. And another big piece here, which we haven't talked about, is scale.
Right, density.
You need a uniform density over a quilt, not necessarily all the same, but you can't have all the really tight quilting in the center and loose on the edges, because you'll get wavy borders. And mock-ups help you with that, because you can see that density on the computer screen.
Even just the tips of having that spare laptop, that second computer, so that you can work on another quilt while something's running.
Yep.
I mean, that was a big thing that, when I went in to go buy it, that was the first thing I went and walked away from my dealer. I'm going to go buy myself a laptop just so I can do mockups and work on it before I get to my machine.
The new people don't do as much as they should.
Yeah, it takes a little while to get used to it, but once you realize how valuable standalone is, it really does make a difference.
The other thing, as far as businesses go, I think one of the things I wish I would have known earlier is how many times I would assess what I was doing and say, is this working? Is this not working? And make changes and track it. Now, if you're just going for yourself, you may not do that. But as a business owner, I started in my basement and I've expanded several times. But you have to look back and see what you're doing and think about it objectively and make changes where you think it's going to affect either your personal health, your finished product, or your bottom line, which is money.
I think evaluate absolutely at least once a year, minimally, to really sit down and say what works, what doesn't work. And I remember even the big decision when I said, oh, I can always afford to buy 2 spools of thread when I get a new thread. Now, that was a big deal because in the beginning I couldn't afford that. But, it's so much easier if you have 2 spools, one for the bob and winder and one for the machine. And I remember it's like, okay, I think we're at that place now and we can do that, so evaluation.
Yeah, one of the things for me, back to thread again, is I started off because I had so many different kinds and I was trying everything. And when I realized to find a brand that ran well for me, I have 3 different brands I use, and I don't try anything else. I know other people do, but for me, I just buy every color of every brand, and it took me a while to build up to that.
Yeah, I do like having a good variety of thread, but I'm like you. Once I it's not that I don't try new brands that come out, I will, but there's something to be said for knowing reliably this will always give me a good result. And that hints back to my only good quality thread. I'm just not doing anything else.
Well, and even just taking the time to dial in your tension so that you go through the process of how to adjust the tension so that when you run into issues, you know how to adjust it. Exactly. I think that was a big thing, like big hurdle for me is my tension is all off. How do I go about adjusting it? And so like putting a practice piece on there and making those adjustments so you can actually see what you're doing and how it adjusts your thread tension was huge.
Right. And I call it a play day, but it's serious play where, like just trying to find out what is, like, I do believe in the TOA gauge long before everybody used to make fun of me for it. I'm not kidding. Like, I can't believe you use that. You know what? It made me a better quilter because I wasn't guessing. I knew what was good to, and you know how I did? I put a practice cloth on and I wrote down a number and set that tension to that and tried it. And then I wrote down another number and set that, and really took the time to see what adjustments gave me the best quality stitch with certain threads and everything else. So,
and then take a picture of your thread path and where your knobs are adjusted to so that you have, if you're like me, you need a picture in order to refer back to.
Yeah, because if I sleep after that, I won't remember. Right? So, well, I think this has been just a wonderful time to talk about things that we've learned or wish we knew when we started. And I'm grateful for the input of everybody here. And I hope everybody in our audience enjoys this discussion. And I would like to tell you to join us again next time for another episode of Digital Diary Adventures of a Computerized Quilter. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.